There it comes. Well, the disk is barely distinguishable, but it's coming there, right there. And that high point to the left of the sun is actually inside the Syrian border. Maybe it was a volcano at one point way back in prehistory. But also, you notice something I hadn't noticed before. I think I mentioned it once already, recently, but before for years I hadn't noticed that there are windmills up there. Can you tell? There to the left of that high point. Now it's interesting, I didn't say anything about it yesterday because you'd all be worried, but the weather was promising 70 kilometer an hour, like 40 mile an hour winds. Again, like we had a week ago, but I don't see any evidence that they came. I didn't hear anything at nighttime, and I woke briefly a couple of times, or once actually, and once this morning early. So it's interesting how these predictions, the challenge of predicting the weather. I want to show you some damage. I showed it last night on the German YouTube live that I do on Friday evenings, the Abendspaziergang. I want to show you some damage here from the storm a week ago. You know, the power of water and waves is quite amazing. It's stirred up a bit. Look at this here. You couldn't see this water underneath this was all bashed out a week ago. There was no water in here. We walked along here a bunch of the times. So this was all taken out last weekend. And then you have these big slabs that were exposed or moved. And this was all opened up here. It wasn't as open. So it's interesting to see the power of nature at work. The forces unleashed. And there we have the moon setting, a half moon. It's only 220,000 miles away. I think. I didn't check the numbers on that for a long time. And I never measured it out. It's interesting, there's very little wind. Maybe there was more wind that I just didn't notice last night that kicked this up. But it's pretty agitated today. And it can't be that one little jet ski out there. He must like the movement. The jet skis want to stir up the water. They're not happy with the calm water. They need to make waves. So this guy got some waves without any effort. Now we got our full sun disk. It's interesting, my eyes can see the complete disk clearly, but the cloud is affecting the image on the screen there. Sorry. Hold on there. Hold your armchair or your pillow, wherever you are. Come on, phone. It's not responding. Okay, let's turn it around here, guys. Just manually. There's a little trigger that gets it to set again, but it didn't respond. I was trying to get down closer to these waves to get the waves and the sunlight, the sun together. I think I'm going to take you on a bit of a walk this morning to the other end of the site because we're doing some work on the visitor center, so you can see it. The progress being made, thanks be to God. The first group I welcomed yesterday was a group of Jehovah's Witnesses, quite a large group. Just as we were going into breakfast, they were already here. And then we had all kinds of groups. We had French people, we had Hungarian people, we had 2 priests from Colombia with their families. One was ordained last week, one of the 28 new priests was ordained, and his first cousin who was ordained a year earlier, but they couldn't have any travel because of the COVID. So they came together and celebrated Mass with their families here in Magdala at Duquinaltum yesterday evening. So let's talk about the readings as we, there we have our purple heron. Here on one little reed, standing here. She's looking for breakfast. Look at that camouflage, the way she's integrated with the structure of nature right there. If only she knew that she was being watched by people from Malaysia and Alaska. And South Africa. So let's head up here to see the development of the visitor center, and as we go we chat. And so we have 2 very precious moments, at least for me. You probably have other ones when you read the first reading this morning. And there we find Paul and his companions, and they're a little bit unsettled. They're moving around from place to place, and there's not traction and catching. And then they have this inspiration to go to Macedonia. Now, what's Macedonia? So we're talking there about the area of Greece, and obviously in the Roman Empire it didn't have those divisions at that time. Greece and up in towards Yugoslavia, you know, all the countries that make up what was Yugoslavia. So Macedonia, you were talking about Europe. It's the first time the gospel will be taken to Europe, and it's a very exciting story. And we just have the first part today. There's one very dramatic chapter that happens immediately after they get there. We'll leave that when it comes and just enjoy the present moment, how they're led by the Spirit. And yesterday on a couple of occasions we spoke a little bit about that at Mass last night as well. Apology for the people who had difficulties at Mass, because what happened was the Vimeo is a program that actually is a contracted program of software for simultaneously broadcasting or live streaming on different channels simultaneously, so on YouTube and Facebook together. And there's some problem with that program and they couldn't do it live, but they're working at the office to make sure that that gets straightened out and that we have a live stream of the masses in the evening. So apologies for that difficulty yesterday. We were speaking about how the church is led by the Holy Spirit, and that's manifested in many, many ways. It's really incredible, the evidence of that throughout history. The Acts of the Apostles show us the path of the church. And there's another very thing I find very tender, another action that Paul did. He took into account people's mentality. And so there's this guy, a young fellow, whose mother was Jewish and his father was Greek, mixed marriage. And that was an issue because the kid wasn't circumcised. And yesterday we worked through that, about this Mosaic law, the need to keep the Mosaic law or not keep the Mosaic law. This was a challenge, how to deal with this. What should the church's position be? And we see that, especially because of Paul's advocacy and many others, they discerned that this was not necessary obligation, that the pagans who would follow Jesus and be baptized and become the church, that the Jewish members could continue having their circumcision, but this was not necessary for salvation, that the faith in Christ was enough. And then we see today, the day after we do, we see all that, we see Paul circumcising Timothy. And then we have to see why. And he didn't do it because he changed his mind on the issue, but he did do it in order not to scandalize the large Jewish population in the area. And there we see a very important principle emerging that's become enshrined in the understanding of church law and discipline and institutional life. And it is lex suprema, the supreme law, salus animarum. Latin is very synthetic. Lex suprema, salus animarum, the health salus. I salute you. I wish you the best. Salus animarum, the health of souls, to animate, anima. So the health of souls. So if we were to do something that would damage the health of souls, this is very serious. Jesus talked about that, about scandal. Not to give scandal to these little ones, because their names are written in heaven, their angels are before the presence of the Father. And he didn't want to scandalize these Jews, to upset them to such a degree. And he didn't do it because of the need for salvation. This was already clarified. He did it because their heart was so set there that he didn't want to cause a major issue for them. And so this is a very beautiful thought. And parents do that as well with little children, as the children wouldn't understand. Maybe there's something okay, but they won't do this particular thing for children because the children don't have the mindset to understand the situation. And they will be very gentle so they don't hurt the conscience of their little ones. So before we go to the gospel, let's just make a comment where we are here. We're at the visitor center. This has always been the main entrance to Magdala since we started working here. The guest house didn't exist at all. And for years and years and years, many people, maybe many of you, have come through this gate. The buses would park here, but this has been closed since COVID. And now we had to, by regulations, we had to move the containers. We started with one little hut actually. and eventually became a container, then it became 2 containers, then it became 3 containers because the crowds were growing. And then the authorities asked us to move us in, but we had lots of bureaucratic difficulties getting all the permissions. We had to deal with archaeology and with all different kinds of stuff. But finally this is getting going. And so there's progress here with the roofing, because we need some shade for the visitors. So there's going to be a wonderful roof here. This is a provisional visitor center. It will take us a number of years to get the big visitor center developed. So this is part of the work going on. So little by little the roof is coming together, and then it won't take long, hopefully, for the different units here, services, so people can get a coffee or a drink, so people can go to the restroom. As when you're traveling as pilgrims, those are basic needs. So lots of work to do. We have some volunteers helping, and obviously professionals. A place like this needs to be properly built. And here we are looking into the synagogue. So, and here are the restrooms. So little by little things are taking shape again, thanks be to God. So then the gospel is very strong on the hatred that's coming the way of Jesus' disciples. Jesus is very clear about it. If you want to be my disciple, you'll be hated, you'll be rejected. So many have experienced that, so many experience it today. It's quite the challenge to be a follower of Jesus in many places, in many cultures. Even in the Western culture, sometimes people can be very harsh, very negative. Kind of shocked to see some reports coming even from Ireland, from my own country, about attitudes and hostilities. But those are waves that happen throughout history, sometimes triggered by the faults and failings of baptized and ordained members of Christ's body. And Jesus wants us to be ready for all eventualities. So I think we leave it like that for today, people. God bless you. See you later, alligators. Enjoy the gift of the morning, the gift of the scriptures, which is a sunrise in itself every morning, and all the beautiful gifts that the Lord provides in your own environment. God bless you.